2022 is hitting up in 2019.
You know, some of the people who are now complaining about their bids being frustrated are the same people who have been on the campaign trail for the longest we can remember. But again, two wrongs don't make anything right. The reality on the ground is that the entire scheme around the BBI is not primarily about building bridges, but it has proven to have been about moving bridges. You move one bridge, like if you're exiting Mombasa, so you move the Nyali bridge from Nyali, you put it at Likoni. So yes, you have created a new bridge, but you have removed another one on the other side. So the same crisis there, because the disintegration we have witnessed in Jubilee in the last 2 years is unimaginable. And even as Joy is putting it, it would have been impossible even to imagine that that would be a reality. Today, when I listen to Murkomen, who was more government than the government, today speaking as a leader of opposition,
I remember actually
speaking like and John Bana speaking as a leader of government business. Then you realize we are living in very interesting times.
You know, it's interesting because the fact that even you know, sometime last week the opposition chief Raila Odinga had said that you know, whoever does not support the BBI, and especially was pointing out to the Ruto and the Tanga team, the deputy president, that they will be swept into political oblivion.
Yes. So you realize actually we are living in very interesting times where if you are making tea, you start by putting the tea in the cup and eventually put it in the fire instead of removing it from the fire into the cup. But again, there's also a fault in terms of what Raila has been insisting, that there's a tsunami that is going to sweep these people to the ocean. Tsunamis originate from the ocean coming to the land, not the other way around. So perhaps what he may be projecting may actually also sweep him into oblivion. And this is the reason. There has been too much talk so far. You remember since Okoa, Kenya, there has been too much talk so far. You remember even when Raila was coming back and Baba come back home and those kinds of things. It is Baba almost, Baba while you are away, and those kinds of conversations. One thing sticks out very prominently that Kenyans are not discussing. The fact that up to this particular point, nobody has come and told us we are unable to achieve 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as a country because of fault 7, 8, 9, 10 in the Constitution. As far as I'm concerned, there is nothing wrong with the current Constitution. The issues that the BBI highlighted in terms of national cohesion, in terms of national values, in terms of fighting corruption, all those things are in the current Constitution. The war on corruption is primarily and entirely anchored in the Constitution. That's why we were cognizant of the menace that corruption had cost this country to establish an independent institution in the Constitution called the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. It is a constitutional commission. That's why we are cognizant of the challenges that we face with characters of no character getting elected into office. That's why we created Chapter 6 of the Constitution. The same parliament, the same leaders, including, because Raila was in parliament when these laws were being passed to operationalize the Constitution, they're the same people who watered down the provisions of the Constitution in terms of legislation. So we have to reach a point we agree that we are not facing a constitutional crisis and we are not facing a legal crisis. What we have is a deeply seated moral crisis as a country that we can hardly sustain anymore.
All right.
The moral filth that has characterized our leadership has run so deep. It is, unfortunately, I would want to give it as an example, like the way we give it as an example of a cancer that now has reached a level whereby we can't sustain it anymore. And something has to give. That's why you realize, even as of now, even the impunity that civil servants have been operating with, like the corruption that was recently highlighted, say, in one of the public universities, it is happening in our hospitals, it is happening in our energy sector, it is happening in our roads construction sector. We have a road construction sector that inflated the cost of constructing roads when the Kibaki was around from around 100 million shillings per kilometer. Today, the average road under Jubilee is being constructed at 1.1 billion shillings. Same tarmac, same bitumen, same kokoto, same workmen, same machinery. We are not building these roads using rockets. So what we need to begin to address is the moral challenge we are faced with as a country.
Okay.
Because like when we talk about even the back and forth in terms of antagonizing communities against the others, it is coming primarily from the top leadership. It is not actually emanating from the common Mwananchi. Believe you me, Wanjiku down there has no problem with their neighbor. They have lived together and they borrow salt and matchboxes from each other until your tribe or demigod says, oh, you know, these guys are bad. These guys are the ones who have been stealing from you. So even in the larger scheme of things, and what we are seeing under BBI, in my view, what BBI is pursuing, in my view also this Tanga business that the Deputy President keeps telling us, you know, we want to become this so that we can be able to do that. Yet up to now, he's not coming back to us and telling us, I promised you this number of stadiums. I have done none. You know, like Governor Sonko in Nairobi never promised anybody any stadiums, but right now he has a stadium to show that he's ready in Dandora. You know, we need now to begin to interrogate these leaders and demand answers, so that we are not just carried by emotions. Oh, now we need to fix this. You know, if we create a post of a prime minister, I have not seen any problem whereby this country has ground to a halt because we have governors who don't have a supervisor. I have not seen any.
All right. And listen to this, you know, even as we talk about what is happening and the clamor for the 2022 politics, I remember reading from one of the local dailies that says the referendum is apparently a pre-season match between Raila and Ruto ahead of 2022, Joy.
And in fact, I was waiting for Muller to finish telling me, you know what, if I think like a politician, I would do the same. I would do the same, because what that does, it keeps your core engaged in between matches. This is like the halftime show.
Yes.
You have to give people during the halftime show so that they don't go away and lose interest and get into their cars and drive home. You want them to stay till the end of the match.
Yes.
When I was learning politics in my 20s, one thing that we used to be taught was you start your next campaign on the day they announce the results of this campaign, or of this election.
But that's not sustainable.
No, but what that does, initially when we were being taught, it was in terms of building your track record, engaging with the voters, keeping your name out there, so that by the time you're going to polls, don't wait until when they now say we are going to elections, then now you emerge, I want to be a leader. No, but now in Kenya, we've elevated it to a level where we keep people engaged with big things. So you'll find, for example, we had the banana orange referendum that gave birth to the Orange Democratic Movement. That it was ODM Kenya, and then the orange was split, and we had ODM, and ODM Kenya was left, you know, morphing into Wiper eventually. Then, come the next time, it became okay. You know, no, in fact, started with Moi must go. As in, we always have a cause. There's always something in between to keep people engaged. So what we have right now, I wouldn't be surprised, because I don't know if you saw the viral video that was going around of a commander and Honorable Ruto and Orengo, and these guys are all.
I was there actually during the memorial of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta.
Yes, and Bana, these guys are all one big. I wouldn't be surprised if this guy sat down and said, okay, now what are we going to do to keep these Kenyans? I wouldn't be surprised that this is a mutually advantageous position where the protagonists keep at it, you know. They just keep us all engaged, keep us all picking sides. Because, I mean, what would happen if they really actually just went to work and it was just business as usual and waited for 2022? It would be, they have to start whipping us afresh. But now we are all hooked. I mean, politics is our national drug. It's an obsession that we all have. The misfortune with that is it's an expensive addiction to have. Because if it actually actualizes into a referendum, how much is that going to cost us? Look at the census, how much the census has cost
a whole 18 billion shillings.
And Huduma number, look at how much.
6 billion, that's already 24 billion.
These things, you talk about them like, you know, if we bring referendum, then, I mean, referendum isn't free. It is not us guys standing up at Uhuru Park and being told, as many as in favor say aye. No, it is
a costly affair.
And cents. And if you look at it, something like the Big Four agenda, for example, housing, health, those are things that affect our bread and butter, our day-to-day issues. You'd think common sense would tell you that that's where our energies and our money should go. But now you've got a CS who's telling people, you know what, actually, shika a big four. At a year big, shika a BBI, shika a big four.
Yes.
It just tells you know, our leaders sometimes need to have a heart for people. They need to get to a place where they have a heart for the people. Because if they lose that, eventually, somebody said, if the poor run out of what to eat, they'll eventually eat the rich. There'll come a time our leaders will stand up and talk, and we'll pelt them with stones. The images of the Somali president being in a cage, like, you know, like Ngombe being taken to court, the Sudanese president. Those things will happen. The Ukrainian parliamentarian was thrown in a dumpster.
Yes.
We're going to see such things happening because Kenyans are reaching a attrition point with politics, and our politicians need to smell the coffee.
All right, Ben.
And actually, there is something interesting that you have mentioned about the current obsession, especially by Kenyans with politics. And it is gradually dawning on the majority of Kenyans that for a long time, or for quite a while, we have been taken for a ride. Because in my view, even whether it was in consensus that, well, you guys, you run with this and I run with this, we keep the people engaged. In my view, these debates are escapist. Jubilee is just deliberately avoiding and evading responsibility. As we are running with this, for example, I'll give you scenarios. Kenyans are not paying attention to the reality that we have people who are dying of malaria in Baringo.
Exactly, in Tahiti.
You see, the diversion. Kenyans are dying of malaria, something so basic.
Malaria.
And because we don't have drugs. Yet, just a month ago, we saw a report that KEMSA, actually we have drugs worth 1.2 billion shillings that expired. Kenyans are not paying attention to the reality that BBI was allocated 10 billion shillings in this current budget. We have spent 18 billion shillings to count ourselves as if we don't exist. We spent another 6 billion shillings for the Huduma number. That is 34 billion shillings. Out of that, we have a stalemate that has been running since April. Now we are in September, where the National Assembly has completely refused that they cannot even add the governors an extra 1 billion shillings. This is the 1 billion shillings that could go make a difference in ensuring that these governors can pay doctors, they can buy medicine for the hospitals, they can fix the little bridges, even if it is the crazy ones I've seen on social media occasionally. So it tells you where our primary focus is as a country. We have an addiction, and we have a way of investing so heavily in sideshows that we don't pay attention to the real issues that really affect us. We are not discussing, like recently, you remember Mwangi Kiunjuri came out from nowhere and told us that we have a huge maize shortage. When people made noise, then suddenly there was maize, and some 10 million, I don't know whether 10 million bags of maize was released to the millers. So it tells you that we are constantly being kept busy with sideshows to avoid the realities. To avoid the realities that, as we are speaking this morning, there are at least 15 million young Kenyans who wake up every morning to do nothing because we are not creating opportunities. Yet we are fixing, we are fabricating the footbridges for the Thika superhighway in China, and we have the Kariobangi light industries where they have been fabricating everything in this country for the last I don't know how many years. I mean, at the end of the day, the president needs to have a meeting with himself because it seems his advisors are not helping him.
Misplaced priorities, perhaps?
No, he needs to have a meeting with himself because his advisors have completely failed him. Now, 2 years down the line, Big Four agenda, we have not one single kiosk, let alone a house, to show for the housing. And we were supposed to be doing 500,000 houses. We don't have a kiosk anywhere. When we talk about food security, we have not seen any effort to either subsidize farm inputs or even improve on fertilizer or even manufacture fertilizer locally. In fact, the last time I remember there was a fertilizer factory that was to be done in Eldoret that already ended up, the land is already in private hands, or they go down, one of the two. When we talk about manufacturing, as we are speaking, the cost of energy in this country is ridiculous. We have capital flight. Every day we have factories closing down in this country. So the president needs to have a meeting with himself and realize that this BBI, whether it is Tanga Tanga or any other of these funny frameworks, believe you me, will never help him achieve anything. He has to decide now to be selfish and decide what he wants to be able to do for this country as an individual.
All right.
Because, and here's my proposal to him, the first entry point that he needs to start with is we have a vacancy at the National Treasury. The National Treasury has been at the heart of the mess, the economic mess this country is going through. Let President Uhuru Kenyatta today appoint Edward Ouko as the CS Treasury. Edward Ouko knows from the last MCA in this country to the top CS where and how they steal. So until he fixes the leakage in that at that level, all these things about BBI and exciting the people, you can see the backlash even in his own backyard in Central. He has been attempting to go to Central for the last 4 months. He has not been able to. Why? Because the people eventually are calling the bluff. They are like, BBI, oh, you told us this is Muguruki, now he's your brother. Now you told this other one is your brother. Now he's Tanga Tanga. You know.
So it is quite confusing at that point.
If these guys are not careful, the tsunami that is coming will not come from the quarters Raila is expecting. It will come from Wanjiku. And they will all be swept into oblivion. And it will never be very interesting for any of them.
All right.
Yes.